Ah, macaroni and cheese. Buttery noodles bathed in gooey strings of rich cheddar. Is there anything more, American? Wait, isn't it Italian? Or maybe English? Where did this stuff come from anyway? Let's find out in The Secret History of Mac and Cheese in 109 Seconds. References to dishes involving cheese and pasta go back more than 500 years, as far as 14th and 15th century Italy. But who actually popularized our favorite combination of cheese and noodle? The answer, Thomas Jefferson. Yes, that Thomas Jefferson. The story goes that Jefferson encountered macaroni in France and northern Italy in the late 1700s. He was so smitten by the elbow-shaped pasta that he had a special macaroni extruder shipped back home to Virginia, where he served it to friends and guests, even at presidential dinners. A few decades later, Mary Randolph, a distant cousin of Jefferson's, included a recipe for macaroni and cheese in her highly influential cookbook, The Virginia Housewife. Notably, her recipe had only 3 ingredients: macaroni, cheese, and butter. Mary didn't screw around, as far as we know. But it wasn't until 1937, when a certain crafty corporation produced a boxed version of the dish, that mac and cheese really caught on. The country was still in the grips of the Great Depression, and a single box could feed a family of 4 for less than 20 cents. So, as you might imagine, it sold like hotcakes. More recently, macaroni and cheese has even gone on to make best friends with bacon, truffle, and lobster. Soon enough, whether boxed or homemade, a nice hot plate of velvety, cheesy goodness became an American staple. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Good morning and welcome to West. We are so glad that you are choosing to worship with us this morning. We are looking forward to having you as our online campus. We're going to talk about that in great detail this morning. Probably you are here this morning because you are a part of our online campus or our both and campus. And this morning we also are having a group meet at the high school for the first time in, 16 months. And so this is the first time we're doing both and we are so excited about that. And actually that's going to be a huge part of the message that I'll get to in just a few minutes. We want to know that you're here. So will you please put your name in the chat room, and our chat host will be chatting with you throughout the service. Also, if you're newer to the West community, we would love for you to text the word welcome to the number that you see on your screen. Or in just a second, I'll read the number to you if you want to get a pencil or paper and pen ready. But we're just so glad that you're here. Let us know that you're new, and we'll send you a gift in the mail, and you can decide how much from us you would like to hear, and we have a small gift for you as well. The number is 704-343-8955. 704-343-8955. This morning, we are going to talk about who we are going to be as a church, and we're so grateful that you are choosing to be a part of West. And so, what is your role in all this? Why are you here? Why should you belong to West? And I hope we're going to share with you some compelling reasons to do that this morning. I have Lindsay to my left, and then Dawn in the middle, and Lexi to my right. And in just a minute after the song, they are going to embark on the Mac and Cheese Challenge. Yeah. And it has something to do with worship, being a part of West, and faith in a spiritual journey. So I hope you'll stay tuned.
Changes. Turn and face the strain. Changes. Don't wanna be a richer man. Changes. Turn and face the strain. Changes. It's gonna have to be a different man. Now may change me, but I can't trace time.
Almost 11 years ago, when we had our first preview service as a church, it was actually the beginning of August, and we had spent a lot of time as a launch team and as a mama church at Williamson's Chapel praying about what this new faith expression, this new faith community was supposed to be. And it came to our realization that within 9 miles, the greatest distance being 9 miles, we had like 4 different churches with over like 2,000 people a part of that church. So we had St. Therese, and we had Rocky Mount, we had Williamson's Chapel, and we had the Cove. And all of those churches had membership rolls, or whatever you want to call it, over 2,000 people. And here we were, this little baby startup campus, and we were wrestling with, okay, so how in the world would we ever compete for people with churches that are so large and have so many resources? And so we made the very conscious decision that, number one, there is no competition. That as a church, we are all trying to lead people to encounter God through the person of Jesus Christ. And whether it is a Catholic tradition or a non-denominational or Baptist or Methodist, we're not in competition. And so we made a very, very firm decision early on that we were not going to compete for people with other churches. That what we were going to do is we were going to find our own particular niche. And we were going to find our own culture, our own core values, and of course linked to Williamson's Chapel, but we were going to try to reach a very specific group of people in a very specific way. And what we discovered is that over the last 11 years, we have been able to do that. Some of that was learned as we did it and as we went along, but what we figured out a couple of years in, when it was time for us to actually charter as a church, is we had a very distinct flavor. So I have invited these ladies to be with me this afternoon. They were given 0 advance warning, which is how I love to do things anyway. And so all they know is that we are going to talk about macaroni and cheese. I don't know about you, but I love macaroni and cheese. Would you put in the chat room right now if you like macaroni and cheese and like what's your favorite way of making it? We all would like to know that. And it's a great way for you all to engage with one another in the chat room. But macaroni and cheese, like, it is one of the staple dishes for tons of people. But what I've learned over my 50 years is that there are a lot of different ways of making macaroni and cheese. And I learned that the hard way. So I thought today we'd have a little macaroni and cheese challenge. One of our core values here at West is to have fun. And so I'm going to have fun. We're going to have fun at others' expense this morning. And so I'm going to go in order of age. And Lexi is younger than Lindsay by 2 months. And so I figure Lexi has the least experience by sheer proxy of age of making macaroni. So Lexi, talk to our friends through the camera and tell us how you would go about making macaroni and cheese.
I think how I would normally do it versus the purposes of this video are completely different things.
No, I just want you to tell the honest truth. Like, there are no purposes to this video other than you telling the truth.
I am a Velveeta box mac and cheese type of gal.
Very good. Well, thank you for your honesty. And we probably won't be coming over and asking you for dinner, but that's okay. We appreciate your honesty. So, Lindsay, can you top the Velveeta boxed shells and cheese recipe?
So I actually learned a couple of Thanksgivings ago to make it a crock pot recipe mac and cheese, where you put the noodles in and you put milk and cream in it, and then you put shredded cheddar and Parmesan and salt and pepper and let it slow cook for a few hours and like mix it every few hours, and it's so good.
I think Thanksgiving, the new staff covered dish, we're all there. All right, Dawn, how are you? You are younger than I am, and but a little more of a seasoned chef, I imagine. How do you make macaroni and cheese?
Well, I'm a little worried because Lindsay sounds delicious, and like she might beat us out, but I think it's a good Southern recipe, so I use the old church cookbooks, and I always get the evaporated milk or the sweetened condensed milk confused, though, so I never remember which goes in. I'm trying to think now for these purposes, but yeah, just good old eggs, noodles, butter, one of those two milks and mix it up and bake it.
All right. So we
Wow.
have three very, very different ways of making macaroni and cheese. And believe it or not, that is really relevant to our faith, to our spiritual journey, and to the way that we do church. So ladies, when I count to 3, I invite you to turn around. You don't have to like fight with each other because you're going to go in the other room and you can share. I would hope that as church staff, you're willing to share. But grab the ingredients that you think you may need, some plastic gloves, and go in the front room. The noodles are here, and we have some cooking appliances, a toaster oven, and a hot plate. And I want you to make us up your best version based on the ingredients that are here of macaroni and cheese. Okay? Ready? All
Ready.
right. 1, 2, 3.
Tony's gonna be so disappointed.
Are there noodles?
The noodles are
Oh,
out here.
okay, awesome.
All this pain, I wonder if I'll ever find my way. I wonder if my life could really change at all. All this earth, could all that is lost ever be found? Could a garden come up from this ground at all? You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of the dust. Make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of us. All around, hope is springing up from this old ground. Out of chaos, life is being found in you. You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of the dust. You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of us.
So as Dawn, Lindsay, and Lexi are away busy creating their own versions of macaroni and cheese, I want to tell you a story. So when Tom and I first started dating, of course, when you start dating someone, you want to impress them, right? And so one day I heard him say that one of his guilty pleasures is macaroni and cheese. And I'm like, oh, sweet. I've got that in the bag. I think I started making macaroni and cheese when I was like 10 years old. And so I've got 40 years of making macaroni and cheese. This is a no-brainer. The first time that I cook for him, I'll make macaroni and cheese. So I had it all planned out. I was going to wow him with my cooking skills. And so we had dinner. It was a nice dinner. And then I asked him, I'm like, well, how'd you like it? And he said, I liked everything. It was really good. And I said, did you like the macaroni and cheese? He's like, yeah, that was really good. And I was like, yeah, I got this. And so then a few weeks later, just in random conversation, he said, and it was totally out of the blue. We weren't talking food or cooking. He's like, have you ever had macaroni and cheese with like egg and cheddar cheese, and you like melt the cheddar cheese in with the egg and some milk, and you put it all together and you bake it? Have you ever had it that way? Now, I knew he was not just randomly asking me if I'd had that version of macaroni and cheese, so I knew that that was the way that he apparently preferred it. It was his tradition. It was what he was used to. And, who knows? Did he even give mine a fair shot? We'll never know. But he's like, have you ever tried it that way? I really like it that way. So I was, determined that I was going to master this way of making macaroni and cheese. Now, what I could have done is like read about it and watch some videos, but in classic Andrea fashion, I would read just a little or see the ingredients and think I had it figured out. And I will not bore you with a 5-minute macaroni and cheese story, but let me just tell you that over the next couple of years, I have made macaroni for him probably 4 or 5 times, and each time that I try to make it his way, it just gets worse. Like one time, I noticed that he was salting it before he even tasted it. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, well, I'm salting it. I'm like, that is such an insult to the chef. And he's like, you're not a chef. I'm like, but I am. I am your chef right now. You haven't even tasted it. And then the next time that I made it, we were going to parents' weekend, a family weekend at State to see his daughter. And I was going to bring the macaroni. And so I got up super early so it would be fresh. And I made it and I put all the ingredients in it and I baked it right before we left so that it wouldn't, be messed up. And when he got to my house to pick me up, he's like, I said, taste it. It's going to be just right. Like, I worked really hard this time. And he always hates to hurt my feelings or tell me anything negative. And I could just tell, he moved his head around. And I'm like, what is it? Just tell me. He's like, well, it's really dry. Did you put milk in it? I'm like, yes, I put milk in it. How do you bake it without milk in it? And then I started to cry in classic Andrea fashion because, if you say anything happy or sad, I cry. He's like, are you crying over macaroni? I said, I am. Actually, I'm crying because I really wanted it to be perfect. And then my last attempt and my final attempt in this manner was Father's Day weekend, and I wanted to fix him his favorite things. And so I tried one final time, and I used the egg and I used the milk, and apparently I didn't have the temperature right, and I think the egg ended up scrambling itself when I put it in with the milk. I think the milk was too hot, and so when I put the egg in, it started looking like little pieces of scrambled egg, and I just felt so defeated. But I'm too prideful to mention that to him, so I was just hoping he would overlook it. And so when we were sitting down to dinner, he said, did you put cottage cheese in this macaroni? And I'm like, no. And he goes, what are all these little whitish yellow balls that are in here? And I'm like, you know what? It's just a cluster. I give up on the whole macaroni. Well, then over the 4th of July, some friends were celebrating together, and they wanted macaroni and cheese. And I thought about doing it Tom's way or Dawn's way, which apparently they should have dinner together, and because it's with egg and milk and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, you know what? I don't know how to do it that way. And no matter how hard I try, it's never right when I do it that way. So I'm going to go back to my old way, my 40-year macaroni and cheese way, and do it the only way that I know how. It may not have been as good as the way that Tom is used to having it for him, but guess what? When I did it the way that was my own context and my own experience, it actually turned out edible, which is much unlike some of those other versions that I've tried. I mean, we threw them away because they tasted so poorly. Faith in church is a lot like that. As I mentioned, when we started 11 years ago, we had some really difficult decisions to make. It was very intimidating to launch a church in an area where within a 9-mile radius, there are multiple amazing, dynamic churches that we don't want to compete with. I mean, I'm friends with the pastor at Rocky Mount and Williamson's Chapel. They were my colleagues, and I'm not going to try to take people away from them. And the folks at the Cove were so gracious and coached us in how to be a portable church. I mean, we didn't want to try to compete for the kingdom of God. So we had to think about who are we trying to reach and how are we going to try to reach them. Fast forward 10 years and a pandemic happens. And we as a church community go into this pandemic a little anxious. I know the staff and I spent countless hours on Zoom and together here because we had to be present to film worship, talking about what's going to happen if this pandemic isn't over in just a few weeks or months. We kept looking at our bank account because, we had not, planned on a pandemic. And frankly, we're never poor stewards of your money, but we are a newer church. And when we started, our bank account started at zero, actually in a deficit because you had my salary that we had to pay. And so we were anxious and we had real fear. When I would talk to some of my colleagues on the phone, they'd be like, oh, this is all good, we've got this because, we have this endowment or we have this fund or we have this. And several of my colleagues that I talked to within just 1 week time period, they all told me that they had over $500,000 in the bank just waiting for an emergency fund. I'll be elated if we ever get $5,000 in the bank, period, much less for an emergency fund. It was a very trying time. But here we are, 16 months later. Our bank account's still in the positive, and we never went, in red letter territory or red number territory. We never had to sound out alarms like, hey, people, can you please give just a little so we can keep the doors open? And even more important than money are the stories of life change that we kept hearing. New people coming to West through the pandemic, through going completely online. When life stopped happening as far as outside factors, and people were confined to their homes. They had a lot of time on their hands, and they had a lot of search engines on the computer, and multiple people found us. And once they found us, so many of them stuck with us. And now you call West your home. So when it came time to reopen, we were very, very intentional. And just like we were intentional 11 years ago, and we made some really big and difficult and challenging decisions about who we were going to be and how we were going to offer church. We have wrestled with those same questions again now. And here we are, and we're making decisions that feel a little daunting and challenging because we've never done church this way before. But we are committed to being the body of Christ, to being the light of Christ in this community, and not just this community, but in this world. I've shared with you people in Uganda, groups of people in Uganda that worship with us every single week. They call us their church. We have people in Kenya that call us their church, and we have people in Mooresville, and we have people in Florida, and we have people in other states that call us their church. So we are 100% committed to doing this new next chapter very intentionally, and just like recognizing that there are so many different ways of making macaroni and cheese. We're not worried about how everybody else is doing it. We are worried about the people that have found their way to West, and how can we keep offering you spiritual pathways and spiritual content so that you can encounter the transformational love of Jesus Christ. So what we decided to do, and we have been gifted with a consultant who is, in my opinion, and the folks around that have read some of his writings, he's brilliant. He comes from churches, and a church that we admire and have studied for the past 11 or 12 years. So it's just ironic that he was birthed out of that church and now does what he does for a living. He wrote a book, From Franchise to Local Dive, and the staff and I and key leaders are reading that. He's going to be coaching us as we make this decision of how we offer church. But the bottom line is we recognize that we cannot keep doing things the way that we used to do them, which was go into the auditorium that seats about 600 people. Our tech team is in the very back, and I can't see them, and they see me, but only through a camera lens. We can't communicate with one another, and we try to talk to the people in the room and you at the same time. And we just felt like there's no way that after doing this, like me talking to you, and guess what? Over the last 16 months, I really have come to love knowing that you're there on the other side of the camera. At first, it was so weird, and I'm like, where are the people? I miss the people. But over the last 16 months, having conversations with you over phone or email or text, I know that you're there. And you are very much a real part of this church. You are the church. And we want to make sure that we provide you with an ample pathway to keep being the church in the best way that you can be and we can be together. And so in order to do that, we needed to offer both and. We needed to be together as one body, but worshiping in lots of different ways. And so we are going to have the Lake Norman campus. We are going to have the in-person campus that meets every Sunday, 10 a.m., like we always have. The service will be a little different. It'll be a little shorter, and we'll have some different elements in it. And when I'm there, I'll be speaking only to those people that are there in the room. And then we're going to have an online-only campus, and that is you. And every Sunday, we are going to gather together here in this space at 9 a.m., and we're going to be live, and we're going to be talking in live time, and you're going to be answering things in the chat room, and we're going to have games together and do some fun things together. And then at 11, the message will go on demand. So if you choose to not be here at 9, that's okay too. You can catch the message later at 11. Or if you're a part of the both and campus, we recognize that some people want to have, like some in-person experience periodically and an online experience periodically. But we do want you to choose one of those three campuses. And then a year from now, Lexi is working with a launch team, and we are going to launch a campus called growthco.com. And it is geared for people 20 to 30 years old. She already has a launch team of around 40 people, and we are going to support them just like Williamson's Chapel supported us. But the long-term vision is we will always stay one church in lots of different formats and expressions. We're so excited about what is yet to come. And we believe that by offering who we are in a culture and a context that is indigenous to us, and not trying to be like everybody else, not trying to copy everyone else, that we will be able to be who Christ calls us to be. So, with that being said, I want to share with you a scripture this morning from the Gospel of Matthew. Jesus gives real clarity to who we're called to be and how we're called to live. He was talking to the people that had been following his teachings and his disciples, and I'm sure some of the religious leaders that doubted him were sitting within ear's distance. He said, You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. How salty are you? Are you ready to be a part of a faith community, of a church that is intentional about meeting people where they are and not expecting people to come to us, but we go out into the community and into the world and meet people, meet you where you are, so that we can work together to try to bring flavor out of this world that we're living in? So salt does two things, right? Like, it preserves things, and back in the days long before refrigeration, they used salt to preserve meat and preserve things that were going to spoil. So it preserves things, it keeps them from going bad, but it also does something else. It brings out the flavor that is already there. It just enhances it. So I want you to take a look at this table over here to my right. I want you to take a look at that, and let's talk about it for just a second. So on that first fateful evening, when I cooked dinner for Tom, I asked him to grab the salt out of my pantry. And so he opened the pantry door and he's like, "How many salts can one person have?" Now, I didn't know the answer to that question. I had at the time, I think, 3 or 4 different kinds of salt. I had some pink salt, I had some Himalayan salt, I had some sea salt, some kosher salt, and then, well, I guess I had 5. I had like iodinized salt, or however you even say that. See, I don't even know. And so today I went and I was looking around before worship this morning for salt at the grocery store. And I'm telling you, I had no idea how many salts that there were. There is real salt, which is an ancient coarse sea salt. So I want to know about this, like, ancient. What does that mean? Did they go over to like the Dead Sea and get the salt from there, and that's why it's ancient? And I find it interesting. So you have real salt that's ancient coarse sea salt, but then you have real salt that is ancient fine sea salt. So I do want you to email me after this message and let me know, like, what is the purpose of all of these? Because as I told Tom that evening, I have no idea why I have so many. I don't know when to use them, and I'm sure I'm using them all wrong. And then there's just plain Mediterranean sea salt. And then there's pink Himalayan salt, which I don't know why it's pink or if it's from the Himalayas. And then we have the salt substitute for people with high blood pressure and they don't need salt. There's kosher salt, and then there's the Morton iodized, which I said that word wrong, iodized salt. And then this one is my personal favorite. I didn't know it existed until today, but it is the original. It's called Jane's Crazy Original Mixed Up Salt. Do you ever feel mixed up? I do. And so, like, there's all these different kinds of salts. So salt, historically, and when Jesus was saying this to the people, salt was used to preserve things. But like I said, it was also used to bring out the flavor that was already there. In one of the many macaroni and cheese debacles that I've been trying to woo Tom with over the last couple of years, one time when I made it, he said, "Did you salt the water?" And I've seen on TV that you're supposed to do that. I've never thought there was a purpose to that. So no, I don't do that. I figure we don't need any more salt, you know, who needs higher blood pressure? And so I thought about lying, which lying's never a really good idea. So I'm like, no, I didn't salt the water. And he's like, well, you need to do that. Now, he wasn't being ugly. He was just very factual, like, it's important to salt the water. Even since he said that, up until I was getting ready for this message, I really did just think that was bogus. How in the world could you know if the water is salted or not? So one day I did a little experiment at home, and I cooked a pot of water with some noodles and another pot, and I put salt in one. And then after they were finished and cooled, I tasted both of the different noodles. And believe it or not, the one that the water was salted tasted better. It just had more flavor. Part of what you're going to hear from us in the next couple of weeks is how we as a church are going to be really intentional about joining with you so that we can help you dig into your own journey and your own path and connect with God and love and light and life in new ways. And we're going to do it the West way, which is fun and non-threatening and real and relevant and always willing to change and always following the Jesus model so that life can be transformational. We have some really exciting things that are going to be different. We're going to offer them to all 3 of our campuses, and you're going to have the opportunity to opt in or opt out. But these things are being created, honestly, very specifically for you. Things that will connect us together beyond the 1 hour or 45 minutes on Sunday morning. We are going to help you be the salt. I hope we will be your salt. And then I hope all of us together will be salt for here and salt for the world, so that we can show them that the unending, grace-filled, infinite love of Jesus Christ, it changes everything. It changes us, and it brings out our flavor. I couldn't be more excited for what is ahead for us as a church. And I am so grateful that you found your way to West and that we are in this together in the next chapter of our journey. Thank you for being the salt. Will you pray with me? Gracious God, thank you for reminding us that salt not only preserves things, but it brings out the flavor that is already there. You abide in each of us. We already have that flavor of love and of light. Sometimes it's hard to get in touch with, so God, be our salt and help us find it. Rekindle it if we need to. And then help us be the salt for the world. It's in Christ's name that we pray. Amen. So I'm going to invite them back in. I am equally as excited as you are to see what happened with their macaroni and cheese.
Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. Overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give your away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Yeah, yeah, yeah. When I was your foe, still your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. When I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. You have been so, so kind to me. Overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God.
So with me right now, I have two other West staff people. I have Martin Rose. If you haven't met Martin yet, he oversees our operations and administration, and he is a jack of all trades. And then we have Josh, our worship production director and jack of all trades website guru and bash coordinator. And so they are going to do some taste testing. And so I would invite you to dive in. This was a competition, so let's see which one is the best. Yeah, that's number one for you. That's number one for you. Take a nice little bite.
Instead of a competition that doesn't feel right, could we just make comments on each?
It's got a unique
is
flavor
that your
to it.
comment? Be nice.
That's bad. I need some water.
It's almost minty.
It's very creamy.
Creamy, minty.
It has like the weirdest taste.
It does have a different taste.
Be nice.
Can we move on to
Let's
number
move
two?
We can move on. Sorry.
Regroup.
I didn't mean to hurt anybody's
Regroup.
feelings.
This one's
I'm
got
sorry,
some
who's
weird
ever that
brown
was.
stuff in it.
It might be bacon.
Oh, that'd be good.
I like bacon.
Yeah.
Oh, it is bacon.
Bacon makes everything better.
I now understand why Tom said that one was inedible. Because, like, I didn't think you could mess up macaroni, but
But
you can.
Bacon is good.
That is bacony. That is good. I like that one. And number 3. which looks a lot like number 1.
It's got a different color. It's kind of orange.
It is orange. That's true.
You all right?
I don't think you get workman's comp if you choke while you're doing this.
Is this the one that was on fire? It's very crunchy.
It was the one that they said. Don's like, oh, it's burning.
It's got a smoky taste.
Toaster oven smokehouse. It's good.
I
though.
like the burnt part on top, actually.
Actually, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I really feel like each of these would appeal to a different type. I can't even say it seriously. Every macaroni and cheese has its fan, and every church can reach people in a variety of ways. And thank you for being a part of the taste test. Thanks.
Might take this home with me.
All right, so ladies, thank you for your willingness to be a part of the challenge. And, you know, you have helped me have a little empathy for Tom. There was one that particularly I was not fond of and probably could not eat. And there was one that I really liked. It had bacon. And then another one that, like, it had this crunchy kind of flavor. And but you know what I think we've learned is that there are all different types of churches and experiences, and the world is a very, very big place. And that's why we are so different, because everybody needs different things. And honestly, frankly, the three of you bring a lot of salt to West. And you didn't hear the sermon because you were busy cooking, but it's about how we're called to be the salt of the earth. And you three make West very much a part of this community. And thank you for what you do. And Josh and Martin and the rest of the West staff and leaders, I'm grateful for you. And thank you. May you go and figure out how to be the salt of the earth this week. Thanks.